Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So before I talk about Timecop, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie from 1994, I just want to stress something that I think often is lost on people who watch movies. In general, something like a genre piece like Timecop. Um, Generally speaking, there are movies like Timecop, Back to the Future, anything having to do with time travel, that often deal with certain ideas about time travel. And there always can be a little confusing and can confound the viewer. But more often than not, in most mainstream entertainment, if not all, there is a subtext of some kind. So it refers to something very specific um, in most entertainment. And in particular, films about time travel. Back to the Future had sort of an Oedipal complex, a little bit. I mean, particularly Marty McFly kisses uh, Lorraine Baines, forget her name. Leah Thompson played the character who was the mother. He goes back to the future to make sure his parents meet and fall in love, and he inadvertently kisses her, and she says, it's like kissing my brother." That sort of thing. So there's always something there to make the viewer think about something that mainstream movies sometimes are afraid to tackle. In particular, although the film Back to the Future is not really about incest, but incest to some degree, or an Oedipal complex. So it's very subtle, very nuanced. Now, this movie, Timecop, um, is the kind of picture that seems at first to deal with time travel, but in fact does not. It is really just on the surface, but ultimately what the film is about, I haven't the faintest idea. I don't think it's really about anything. I mean, this is a movie where Jean-Claude Van Damme mostly engages in martial arts fights with other characters. Uh, so here it is. It's the year 2004. Jean-Claude Van Damme plays Max Walker, who is a time cop. He's literally a cop who travels through time to prevent greedy people from his future, prevent them from tampering with the past. Uh, So he has a greedy partner named Atwood, who actually travels back to the 1920s to make stock deals that he knows will go through the roof in the future. Atwood meets his comeuppance, and then there is this idea that they gotta, in the future, they have to start some sort of a regulation where anybody that goes back in time to make money, and essentially that's what it's about. It's making money off of deals that you know will do well in the future, uh, to regulate that and bring them to trial and et cetera, et cetera. Basically, to imprison anyone that does this sort of thing. Um, Now, Senator McComb, played by Ron Silver, is a corporatist, and he oversees his commission to regulate time travel. Because in the opening scene, it shows someone else from the future stealing gold bullion from Confederates to buy arms in the future. And since they see that it's Confederate money that was used, they realize this is somebody that traveled through time. Anyway, it turns out that the Senator McComb has designs in the future where the 10% in the US get to control everything and the other 90% can go to Mexico and live more comfortably. Meaning, control everything and let the poor, off on their way. Now, I never saw this movie in 1994, but I would say that McComb has a good idea about the future of America now, except that the richest 1% own everything, not 10%. Um, so Max Walker is a time cop, and now in the opening scene of this movie, he is married to his wife, played by Mia Sara, who's about as thankless a role as you can imagine. And they face an uncertain future. She's apparently pregnant, blah, blah, blah. But they have about as much chemistry as C-3PO and Lisa Simpson. I mean, you never can imagine that these two are compatible or, are in a marriage of any kind. Um, so unfortunately, she dies. That's right in the opening scene. She's killed. And Max eventually becomes a time cop. He's already a cop, I think, or a guard, I forget now, at the beginning of the movie. Anyway, there's the introduction of Gloria Rubin as Max's new partner. That seems to develop into a buddy-buddy action picture. Then, Van Damme gets into some of the most elongated fight scenes imaginable. So there's fight scene after fight scene after fight scene. And all of it is edited with a sledgehammer. It's a sledgehammer approach, meaning that it's not enough for Van Damme in a master shot to kick somebody in the face. It has to be seen in close up as well, and so it's a constant, this herky-jerky type, fighting. Then there's a rain-soaked finale where there are endless fight scenes, and the movie just gets weary after a while. So the idea that he's a time cop, first of all, there's something odd about that, and this is something Roger Ebert brought up in his review back then, and I thought it was odd to me. The time cops, they travel in a rocket car. So it starts up, and they're blasted off into whatever year they're going to. Then, when they arrive, they're not in the rocket car anymore. They just arrive. They don't just materialize. It's like a plasma effect. They're pushed through this wormhole, and they may land in whatever it is, a piece of land, water, whatever, but there's no rocket car. So my question is, what happened to the rocket car, and how do they get back if there is no rocket car? But then there's a gadget that Ron Silver's character has, because apparently he travels through time too, but he doesn't need a rocket car. He just turns on this little gadget, and he just materializes like plasma from through a wormhole from one specific year to the other. That's how he time travels. So I'm confused by all this. Anyway, the point is that this movie is just not really about anything. It has a couple of interesting ideas, and then it lets them go. It just evaporates. By the time the movie's over, you're not going to have really any idea what it was all about, except he's trying to get back to his wife and maybe prevent her from being killed, which I'm not giving away too much, but that's kind of where it's headed. But then the premise about a government-funded time enforcement commission to battle greedy evildoers from changing the past really is, in the end, just a Jean-Claude Van Damme martial arts movie, abandoning the premise completely and only dealing with it in slivers, but not as a coherent whole. This is not a very well-written film. So I say no to Timecop, mediocre at best. Jean-Claude Van Damme picture with no real ideas in the end, after all. This is from director Peter Hyams, who's done some good films like Capricorn 1, 2010, which I did enjoy, the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's done some good films, Outland, but this is not one of them. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies, signing off.